Hello, everybody, and welcome into my latest live broadcast. And I'm sure my face will appear. There I am. There's a long delay on the end of that intro. I might have to clean that up. Welcome in, everybody. It is the 12th of March. It's the second Tuesday of the month. That's Patch Tuesday for those of you who forgot. And my thanks to the viewers who reminded me. Yes, indeed, Microsoft releases updates on the second Tuesday of the month for their Windows operating systems. You will typically get them automatically. However, if you wish to be ahead of it and take control of it, you can go check for updates right now, and there'll be a couple there waiting for you. I don't think it's anything that important, but there you go. Today, we've got a review of the new TerraMaster F4-424 NAS. I think if you look online, you'll find a lot of reviews of the F4-424 Pro. That's a more expensive model. Try and find a review of the F4-424, and I think the only place it's going to lead you to on YouTube is right here, right now, which I believe is true. So another exclusive that we have for you, and a lot more affordable than the Pro version, and probably a lot more practical. We'll get into that here in just a few minutes. My thanks to our friends over at Acronis. You could use a NAS like this to back up with Acronis and put your images right on it. You can also back up to the cloud or to external drives, whatever you want to do. And we have a 30% off discount throughout the rest of this year for our viewers at Acronis off any Acronis product. And if you don't know what Acronis is, be sure and look at our previous videos. We've had Begowden from Acronis join us and walk us through some of the features and show us how to use it. It's a very simple program, and it's your data. Nobody cares about it but you. I assure you, your whole life will be ruined. Nobody else will give a darn. So if you care enough about it, you'll back it up. If you're already backing it up with another product, I think that's great. If you're not backing it up, you don't know how, just follow our tutorial walkthrough. Acronis has a free 30-day trial. Even if you don't buy the product, restores are always for free. So even if you made your backup today using the free Acronis trial, following our walkthrough video, click by click, step by step, and you decide, you know, you'd rather use the money to go eat at Arby's one time this whole year rather than have a whole annual subscription, that's fine. When your trial expires and something unexpected occurs 6 months from now, as long as you still have that backup you made 6 months earlier, Acronis will always restore it for you for free. Now, granted, you'll lose everything you've changed in the last 6 months or added, but that's still better than nothing. So just bear that in mind and decide for yourself with the free trial. Also, to our friends over at Instant House Call, the remote software I use to service my clients remotely. It's more than just remote access, it's remote repair access. And while you can use it as remote access, it's sort of like using a tow truck as your daily driver to go back and forth to work at the office. It'll do it, but it's not really, you're buying a product that's really not intended to, it can do so much more than just take you to the office. But the benefit, of course, is the price of it can often be less expensive for Instant House Call than just traditional regular remote access, which of course it will do. But free trial, check it out, decide for yourself. All right, guys, so thanks again to those folks. And let's see, hello to everybody joining us in the chat room today. Excuse me, just 1 minute. I have a sneeze coming on. About ready to mute my microphone. These videos are live and unscripted. So, you know, sneezes and coughs and hiccups and stutters, they're all in there because that's what a real life conversation with me is like. All right. Let's say hello to everybody in the chat. Thank you so much again for hanging out with us today. It's been a while since we've looked at a network attached storage or NAS unit. And yeah, I'm kind of excited to look at this one. There was an issue with shipping this back in January. So we were supposed to have this a couple months ago. And then with the Chinese New Year and the 2 weeks off, things just got delayed and delayed. So finally we've got it, and we're super excited to take a look at it. Now the drives I'm going to be using with it are these Seagate 22 terabyte refurbished drives. They're $100 less than brand new Seagate 22 terabyte IronWolf NAS designed drives. You should not put regular hard drives in a network attached storage unit. They just don't last very long. I like using the IronWolf Pros, or even just the regular IronWolf. These are IronWolf Pros. Are normally $399 for the 22 terabyte. They do have a 24 terabyte out now as well. A little bit more money for that one. Renewed, these drives are exactly the same as far as I can tell. They're $100 less each. That's $400 off of 4 of them. That's like buy 3, get 1 free. So anyway, that's what I use. That's my personal preference. I've never had one go bad, but you know, they have a warranty. So not as good of a warranty as a brand new one. You want to spend more, you'll get more. You know, what do you think? Let's see. Hello to Mark Gaines and Dave E. and Doman 2000. Welcome in to David Ice and Mortant 1210. Hello to John Paul Bacon and David Graham. Scott says hello. There's Terry and Thomas Backenstow. Marlene, of course, in the chat room with a Gary McGraw, Kaner Kosler, and I see Philip Gunner. He says, I've lost my NAS power supply. Will anyone do, or do I have to buy the original? You have to look on the back of the NAS power supply, and it's going to show you the voltage and the amperage and the polarity. Polarity being, is the inside of the connector positive or is it negative? That's what polarity is. Now, once you know the voltage and amperage and the polarity, you can look on Amazon. You could type in the make and model of your NAS, regardless if it's QNAP, Synology, TerraMaster, whoever's making it. And we've already got a video going through this whole process. If you just look up Mitch, our friend Mitch had a Synology that wouldn't power on, and we went through this exact process step by step. But that's all you have to do. You need to make sure you get the right voltage, the right amperage, and the right polarity, but it doesn't necessarily have to be from the original equipment manufacturer, although the OEM adapter is likely a better quality. The cheap one you buy may only last a year and you'll be back buying another one. It's a little bit of a gamble. The cheap ones might last 10 years, who's to say? But generally speaking, when you pay more for the original equipment manufacturer, generally you get a better quality product. If you're only planning to just, you know, spend the least amount to just get you by for the immediate future, the cheap ones are fine. If you're looking for a permanent solution to last another 10 years, you might want to buy 2 cheap ones. And when you do that, then the price of the OEM one may not seem so expensive. But that's up to you, and that's how you would replace any power adapter for any device. Anything that takes a power adapter, that's how you do it. Frankie B joins us, says hello, and contributes $4.99 in Super Chat. Thank you, Frankie. Ron Barnish saying hello, and there's Planet Cryos saying hello. Kurt Schlegel and Steve Mercure, as well as Gil Garcia, all say hello. And let's see, what do we have here? It looks like, am I missing somebody? Hal Grubbs says hello. Nick Poverman says hello. Victor Callender says hello. Welcome in, welcome in. And Dave Batt says hello. George Perugia and Ben Laird joining us, as well as Chris Johnson. Thank you, guys. All right. All right. So, make sure that, I hope I got everybody. NetFreak says hello. There's Luke Greenia. Oystein joining us from Norway. 3D Everything and Kelly Stewart say hello. There's Bull142. Mats Olof from Sweden. Welcome in, everybody. All right, guys. So let's start unboxing this thing. This just came in the other day. And I have no idea if everything's in the box. I mean, I'm assuming everything will be fine. It usually is, but sometimes I'll open things up and start prepping them, but I wanted to do all of this live. And yeah, let's do that now. Just so you can see the packaging, that's what it looks like. Craig Casabona with a $20 super chat. Right on. Thank you, Craig. sometimes the easiest way to get things out of the box is to turn the box upside down. Just let everything come out with gravity rather than trying to get your hands down in there and potentially split the box apart, which is what was starting to happen to me. Depends on what the item is. The bigger and heavier the item is, the easier it is to just flip the box upside down. Little tip from your Uncle Carey. All right, so some styrofoam, which we'll throw back in the box. Tape. Guess I'm going to have to cut the tape somewhere in here. I've got some scissors. That. And here is our 4-bay TerraMaster 424. In the box, we should have our power brick or power cable. Actually, no. I think power supply is built into this. So just a power cable. No. It'll be a brick just like a laptop. Yeah, there it is. And it uses a little, it's not a clear relief connector. It's just a 2-pin connector for the power cable, which we've got. Finally, we've got some screws to secure the drives into the trays, although that's primarily for 2.5-inch drives. 3.5-inch drives just snap in, although you can secure them with screws if you wish to. I don't know why you'd want to ruin a toolless entry, but you could. We've got an Ethernet cable that comes included. We've got some cable labels right here. And hard drive labels, I guess is what they are, hard drive labels. And then we have just something called compensation promises. This regards to liability in your data, which of course, data is irreplaceable. Nobody can guarantee your data because there's no way to replace it or value any price on it. And then of course, we've got some basic quick setup guide here. And there's built-in instructions, of course, in help files, as well as tips through the TerraMaster's operating system. Now, the great thing with TerraMaster is if you don't like their operating system, or you'd rather use Unraid or TrueNAS, you can just throw that on here instead. You don't have to use the TerraMaster OS. I want to use it. If I was going to do something like Unraid or TrueNAS or something, I would just build a box. But that's me, right? But just know that that's an option for you. That's something that interests you if you're more of a home lab hobbyist. Now, let me get this plugged in, and we'll take a look at the website here from TerraMaster and see how they're advertising this, what the specs are. We'll take a look over at Amazon and see what it's selling for, whether or not it's in stock. And then I'll also show you these drives over at Amazon in case you're interested in scoring a great deal of $100 off each of these drives that are 22 terabytes a piece that are IronWolf Pros designed for NAS use. Now you'll see I've got the little mini PC out here because we're going to have to control this through the mini PC. Our streaming machine's on an entirely different network, so I can't use that. I also don't want to potentially disrupt the stream by hitting a wrong button. I've done that enough. But with that plugged in, let me just set it aside. I don't want to plug this in just yet. We're going to take a look over at the TerraMaster site to see how they promote this unit. And also to Craig Casabona, thank you for renewing your membership. He's been a member now for 7 months. He says, okay. I mean, some of these messages you could be sending to me privately, but I appreciate your comments. Let's go ahead and look over at Amazon. And let's see, let's look at the TerraMaster page first, the Amazon page second. That'd probably be the best way to do this. So let me grab my window capture here so I can share the screen with you. Okay, so the F4-424, they self-describe as a 4-bay, high-performance, network-attached storage device designed for business. Well, I'd say small business or home use. If you've got a lot of media files, you're going to need the 2 extra bays. I only use a 2-bay NAS myself because 22 terabytes is plenty for me. But for you, it may not be enough. So if you put Well, let's say you go 24 terabytes, you could go 24, 48, another 48 would be 96 minus 1 for RAID. That's a lot of storage. It's got an Intel N95. That's basically the new Celeron processor. 4 cores, 4 threads. It takes DDR5. This is a single channel processor that can only accept up to 16 gigs of RAM. However, TerraMaster says with their RAM, you can actually utilize 32 gigs of RAM. But Intel says you can't. I don't know who to believe here, other than this is a budget processor and it has single channel only. Couldn't do dual channel if you wanted to. And it has a 16 gig limit. So I'm not exactly sure. I mean, TerraMaster says that 32, if you buy their RAM, one stick of 32 will function and be usable. Okay. It also has a couple of M.2 drive slots, which we'll look at later, which you can use to expand your storage or as caching drives if you're moving a lot of little files. And it's got one big fan instead of the dual tiny fans that used to jut out from the back of the old TerraMasters. And I also like the color that it's now black instead of silver. And they've reduced the noise level by going to a single larger fan that does not have to spin as fast to move more air. With the performance, you know, you're looking at a 2.5 gig Ethernet wired connection back on this ×2. There's 2 of them. And of course, 4 cores and 4 threads is nothing to shake a stick at, especially when it comes to NASs. May not be enough for your desktop PC, but to serve files and work as a Plex server, even encoding and decoding up to 8K video files is pretty light work for a chip like this. It should handle it just fine, even with just 8 gigs of DDR5. You might want to add more RAM if you're using a lot of apps. We'll get more into that later. There's a little difference in the performance between DDR4 and 5, which is standard across the board. It's more of a memory standard versus anything unique about this unit. Of course, it claims it's got a higher transmission speed supporting the 2.5 gig Ethernet, which fewer and fewer Synologies at this level, at this price point, offer 2.5 gig. Well, everybody else does. QNAP and TerraMaster all do. Synology has just been left in the wind. I don't know why. Hopefully they'll catch up. Of course, it can be used as a Plex server or media server. It can, you know, send your music and your videos to your phone, et cetera, using their built-in apps. Now, TRAID is TerraMaster RAID, which is like Synology has their hybrid RAID or SH RAID. And it's kind of their version of that, where you can mix and match different size drives. They don't all have to be the same size when you use TRAID. I usually use everything as the same size. But, you know, with a RAID 5, it shows you this is what your storage would look like. And with TRAID, if you blended these drives, this is what it would look like. So again, if you're familiar with Synology's hybrid RAID, this is their version of that. Now, the TerraMaster operating system is, it's still pretty basic. I think TerraMaster works more on giving you more hardware for your dollar and less focus on the software. They kind of give you the basics with the software. And I think Synology and QNAP focus more money into research and development of their software and put more of the money that you're paying for when you buy a NAS from other manufacturers. You're paying mostly for that software development and less for the hardware. That's why with TerraMaster, you'll tend to get better hardware for the same amount or less amount of money than the competitors. Their software is not quite as polished, but it's got all the basics and it gets it done. So depending on your specific use case scenario, you may not even notice a difference, or you might find it unacceptable. I mean, it just kind of depends on the person. Now, me personally, I think the TerraMaster drives I've used in the past have been a bargain, and they seem markedly faster to me than the Synology and QNAP drives I've tested using the same Seagate 22 terabyte drives. Whether or not that's a placebo, I can't tell you. It just seems more responsive. I don't use any of the apps, so I don't care. Let's see. They've got some backup solutions, including backing up this NAS to another TerraMaster NAS or backing up this NAS to the cloud. Once again, they're just kind of looking at what their competitors are doing and coming up with their own version of that. So there's file synchronization and there's centralized and snapshotting, etc. Of course, you've got Docker for people that want to virtualize applications. I don't do any of that. If you're going to, you're going to want more RAM and you're probably going to want more processor. You might want to think of getting the Pro version and spend a little bit more money or lower your expectations with regards to performance. I don't do those things, so I'm not affected by any performance degradation as a result of doing those things. But do know you can if you want to. Of course, the TerraMaster, Asus, QNAP, they all got impacted, was it a year or two ago, by a virus that was encrypting files. And several NAS companies were hit pretty hard by it, and people lost a lot of data. That's all been remedied for now, but hopefully they've all woken up and realized the damage to all their reputations and have upped the security. Time will tell if that's true, but at least as far as the virus goes, that particular virus is blocked out with all the latest updates from the manufacturers. But unfortunately, at that time, some manufacturers didn't make the consumers aware. And so as long as the NAS was plugged in and turned on, you would just wake up one morning and find the virus had infected the machine through the security exploit they took advantage of. Will there be another one? Who's to say? Are they all staying on top of it and issuing automatic updates instead of waiting on customers to read their emails and to act accordingly? We're about to find out. Give it a couple years, and if it all stays quiet, I guess we're good. It's got a mail server, web server, FTP server, MySQL databases, JavaScript, and virtual Java machines as part of their commercial apps if you're in business. The hard drives are completely toolless, as we're accustomed to with the competitors. Synology and QNAP have very similar designs. Nothing new here. This little side panel slides off, and this gives you access to, looks like 2 different M.2 SSDs that you can add as part of your storage array or as caching. Now, if you're storing big video files, likely caching is not going to benefit you. If you're in an office and you have 50 to 100,000 plus smaller documents, spreadsheets, etc., this can really improve the performance of the people in the office accessing the data together off the shared storage. It claims to have better heat dissipation, and I believe that to be true given the size of the fan. And that we also have more ventilation holes than we had in other models. They also claim it's quieter. They've got a 2-year warranty. And if we look at Amazon, it shows this unit without drives is $500. That's a lot of NAS for $500. Now you can look up QNAP and Synology equivalent and compare the pricing. And one might argue the Synology and QNAP software is better refined, and one might argue, who cares? I don't use any of that stuff anyway. I could use the money though. So there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just a different perspective with a different set of values. And as we scroll through the pictures here, they do promote this for business. It does show there are 2 M.2 slots. Everything is empty. This is a driveless NAS, as usually they're sold, or diskless. It's got an HDMI port, a USB HDMI, and we also have a very easy way to install and remove these drive trays. But again, that's they're kind of just replicating what we're already seeing with regards to what folks like Synology and QNAP have been doing. And, nothing wrong with that. It's a good design, and we're happy to see them embrace their interpretation of that toolless design, for sure. Now, with regards to the drives I'm using, these are the Seagate IronWolf Pro 22 terabyte. These are enterprise grade, meaning they're for corporations and large businesses. And so as you can imagine, in a home use, these things are over the top overkill for most end users. You'll likely never have a problem with them. However, because these are renewed drives, you're looking at $100 off compared to the new price. If you want that full length warranty and guarantee from Seagate that only new drives come with, you'll spend $100 more. If you want the reduced warranty, it still has a warranty, it's just not as generous. you're paying for less, okay? And you're going to get a little bit less in that regard. If you want more, you'll pay more. I've never had a problem with any of these refurbished or renewed 22 terabyte drives. They all work exactly as new. I can't tell the difference, but I can certainly tell the $100 a difference price tag, especially when you buy 4 of them. That's $400 extra. It's almost like getting the NAS for free. So think about it. Seagate also sells a 24 terabyte version of the IronWolf Pro. There are no recertified ones because it's a brand new model. And just to give you an idea of cost differential, IronWolf 24 terabyte sells for how much? It's that's $200 more per drive. So just to get that extra 2 terabytes, that's a Skyhawk. Forget that. We're looking for an IronWolf. Skyhawk's not going to do it for us. So it's a $250, almost twice the price, just to get 2 more terabytes per drive. $550 per drive. And if you don't mind spending $2,200 plus sales tax to get 4 of those, have at it. No recertified ones are available at this time. It is a new model, so even that, it wouldn't ship out for a couple of weeks. That's how new it is. Clearly, a lot of people have bought them. It's not like they haven't come out yet. You know, there's over 27,000 reviews here, but they haven't ramped up production to meet demand yet. So there's still going to be a little bit of a delay to catch up, even at that price. Some people just never have enough and have a lot more money than I do. So there you go. Let's go back over to camera 1. And let me take a quick look here in the chat and see what I'm missing. Craig Casabota contributes $2. He says, hey, sorry, thanks. It's all good, Craig. Thank you. Thank you. Planet Cryos with $2 says, just so you know, I'm watching you. Okay, well, that's not creepy. Maybe I like to be watched. That just gets creepier. Let's see. So you guys are talking a little bit here about NAS RAID versions, all good. Now this unit in and of itself is not a backup. This is a storage closet. So anything you put in your storage closet, anything can happen to the closet. Someone can steal it, it can die, it can burn down, it could be, somebody could spill something on it, all your data's gone. So this is just a storage closet, not a backup. A backup is a copy of data, not the only copy of the data. A duplicate copy of the data put somewhere else. Won't do me any good if I have my Social Security card in my wallet and a copy of my Social Security card also in my wallet. In case something happens to my Social Security card, I have my copy. But what if something happens to my wallet? I've lost both my original and my copy. So you gotta keep them in separate places if it's an important thing, if it's an important document like a Social Security card, or if it's data, pictures, videos you've filmed, things that you've collected. If it's important to you, you wanna make copies onto something else, whether that's another external drive or up in the cloud, even another NAS in another building somewhere, that would be a backup. This is not a backup device. This is a network attached storage device, NAS. You would need 2 of them in order for one to be a backup, for one to be a duplication. Okay, just to be clear, there's a lot of misunderstanding between moving your data to a backup drive. You can't move data to a backup drive, then it's not a copy. You can only copy data to a backup drive if you want it to be a backup drive. If you move the data, if you take it from here and you move it over to here, you no longer have a copy, or you don't have a duplicate. You've just changed its location. You want it in 2 locations at the same time. And preferably, the further away those locations are, the better, should there be a fire, a theft, a flood, a virus, or any countless other events that will always blindside you and you will never ever see it coming. It'll always shock you. You will never know what was going to happen until it's already done. And hopefully you've got a recovery plan like car insurance. You never expect to be in a car accident, but if you are, you call your car insurance company and you have them help you. It's always unexpected. It's always unwelcome. Question is, are you ready for it when it happens? Because it's only you. You understand? It has no impact on me whatsoever. If you get sued and they take your house, it has no impact on me. So, or anybody else. If you won't do it for yourself, nobody's going to do it for you. All right. Now, as far as loading this up with drives, it looks pretty straightforward. We've got these drive trays here, which if we push in on that, then the bottom kicks out and we can slide the tray out. Now the tray, if I bring this up here closer to the camera and show you, we've got a toolless design where these little clips come off and we can slide the, just place the drive in, line up the holes and push the clip back on both sides. If it's a 2.5-inch drive, there's little holes drilled into the bottom and you can use the screws to secure the 2.5-inch drives, whether those are mechanical or solid state drives. So if we pull both of these ends off of here and grab one of these 22 terabyte drives, place it so the connectors are at the back, should be pretty obvious. It's going to seat in there just perfectly. And we're going to grab one of these clips. And I really should put my glasses on for this because the little holes, they're quite small and the lighting in here isn't the best. So let me see if I can figure this out. Now, these clips right here, they have a little arrow indicator on one end. See the little arrow up there? And that arrow, I think, goes towards, let's go towards the front. No, it's got to go towards the back. I wasn't paying attention when I took it off. Yeah, and then that just snaps in place. And the arrow is going to point towards where the connectors are. And then we'll just grab this other one and do the other side. Arrow points towards the back. And it will click into position. So that's one drive done. That's how easy this is to populate with drives. And then bear in mind, when we put this in, we pushed it at the top, right? So it's not going to go in this way where you're pushing it at the bottom to get this lever to move. So don't force it in. If it's not going in easily and like butter, you've probably got it in 180 degrees backwards. And then just push it in there and it just locks in and we'll just do the next three. Just like that. No tools. Pretty easy stuff. And if the holes aren't lined up just right, these just don't snap in right. I don't necessarily think there's a difference between left and right, but if you do run into a struggle, switch them out. Should go in effortlessly. I don't think there's a difference between them. Just sometimes grabbing a different one and taking a different approach is just a lot easier than trying to figure out if you're getting it on a wrong angle or something. Yeah, that's how that goes in. Just making sure those are well seated. Final drive. So easy to spend $400 for each tray in 30 seconds. There goes another $400. I guess 300, right? I saved 100. There we go. Right in there. Yeah, you don't necessarily get a positive click, but you will see they sit flush when they're installed correctly. Now, if we come around the back, oh, this got a lot heavier. Come around the back here. Let's go ahead and give it some power, which is this guy here, right? And there's only two connectors we're putting back here. We're going to plug in our power connector, and then we're going to plug it into our network using either of the Ethernet ports. That's it. We're installed. At this point, we have to turn it on and configure it, format the drives, create our array, set it up the way we want it. The way I'm going to want this is what's called a RAID 5 array. We'll use the TRAID, which is much more, it's like regular RAID, but on steroids. And if we come around to the front, let's see here. You'll notice I haven't turned it on. There is no massive, on-off switch. We just have a soft on, soft off like a PC might have, and that's located somewhere. Where is it? I can't find the power button. I've had customers complain to me that when I ask them to turn things off and back on again. And so right here it says F4-424. And you know what? There must be a power button in the back. Usually it's up front. Okay, so here on the back, TerraMaster has their power button. I don't know how well you can see it. There's a little button that says power right here. We're just going to press and release it. You'll see the fan start to turn. It gives us a beep to let us know it's starting to load. And then I'm going to turn this around, and you should see some drive light activities that let us know that drives are being initialized, recognized. And of course, it's got to recognize them before we can configure them. And we've got all green lights. If any of those lights weren't green, they were off or they were red, that would indicate there's a problem with that particular drive, and they're all numbered. That's why there's 4 drives and there's 4 lights, plus a power light. All right, so at this point, I want to log into this computer. So in order to, trying to think how I'm going to access this computer. This isn't going to cut it because this cable that I plugged into it goes to a router over there. So this little HP mini PC, I was thinking I was going to plug it directly into the NAS, but that's not what I'm going to do. I need to plug it into the router. Or I could also just be on the router wirelessly, now that I think about it. Might already have it set up that way. Let's get this cable out of here. I don't know why that was in there so tough. I might already have that configured on wireless. Let's find out. Let me put this cable back. Otherwise, if I don't, I'll just run a cable to the router, but I'll have to run like a 20-foot cable for it to reach. But if your router is wireless, of course, you'll be able to access this wirelessly, and you'll be able to access it over your phone when you travel around the world, if you configure it that way. So let me switch over this way. Let's turn these switches on the keyboard and the mouse. And let me go over to this machine right here, which should be an HDMI input. Oh, it's doing updates. Lucky me. Okay. Well, I did mention it was Patch Tuesday, so it just started doing that on its own. Let's let that finish, and let me take a quick look here in the chat and see what you guys are saying here. David Graham says, when unpowered SSDs have a limited retention period. That is all theoretical, and it's never been proven. If you can show me an SSD that has lost its data, I'll give you $1,000 for it, if you can prove it. The problem is we have a lot of people on the internet that are research people, and they're working on theories, but nobody's ever actually shown me one in real life. In theory, that's true, but in reality, never seen it. I've powered on a 5-year-old SSD that hadn't been turned on in 5 years, and I asked the audience back at Studio A, do you think the data is going to still be on here, or do you not? Let's place bets. And surprisingly, a number of people said there's not going to be any data left on it. When I plugged it in, it's all still there. Take a flash drive. If you honestly believe what you're saying is true, take a cheap flash drive, any cheap flash drive that you have laying around, put some data on it, mark the date on it, and put it in a drawer and check it in as many years as you want to wait. Now, every time you plug it in, you're renewing the charge. So then you have to start over from day 0 again. I'm telling you, I have flash drives that are 10 years old that have absolutely 0 data loss. That is all theory and has never, ever been proven in reality. But believe what you want to believe. There's a lot of nonsense out there, and people just don't know the difference. They believe the theories, and they don't believe the reality, and they've never seen proof. They're just taking somebody's word for it. Please, don't take anybody's word, not even mine. Test it for yourself and share your results with us. All right, let's see what else we are talking about here. Andy wants to know if I'm going to change the logon details after you set the NAS up. We'll go through it. We're going to go through it. Netfreak wants to know, how can someone recognize a refurbished drive compared to a brand new one? Are there any special marks on them? Well, I thought it was pretty obvious if you were just, I mean, that's the whole reason why I show you the screens. That always puzzles me when it's full screen. You see the product full page, and I show you the other product not refurbished, and you didn't automatically see how very different the labels were. Let's give you another chance. Let's try it again. Let's go back over here. And let's take a look at the IronWolf 22 terabyte drive. Just the regular 22 terabyte drive. And this time I want you to pay attention, because clearly you weren't paying attention. So the 22 terabyte drive has a label that is green, black, and red. It is a very distinct label. When we look at the refurbished drive, if we go back a couple, that's it. Does that label look anywhere near the same? And what does it say right below the word Seagate? This is a plain black and white label with a green border that says recertified product right on it. So sometimes, while I invite questions, sometimes the answers to the questions were already provided and it just went over your head. But there you go. That's generally, recertified products will have different labels if they're professionally recertified. I mean, if some guy in his garage is recertifying them, then, you know, what do you expect? But when they're professionally recertified, they get brand new labels that differentiate them for obvious reasons. All right, so that information there provided again one more time. Now, let me go back over to my HDMI input. We're back to the desktop, finally, okay. And if I look, are we on the Wi-Fi? We are on the Wi-Fi. Look at me go. All right, now to find this TerraMaster on our network, we can download a free utility. There's a number of different ways we can do this. I can go to the command prompt and I can search for the TerraMaster drive and find its IP address and manually type it in. Or I can bring up TerraMaster's website if I want to make this easy on myself. And I'll just type in TerraMaster assistant, maybe something like that. Let's just go to TerraMaster website and go to downloads. Let's just do that. And here under TerraMaster, it says, oh, look at, they're promoting the 424 Pro. And again, that's mostly all the other reviews you're going to find here on YouTube are going to be on the more expensive Pro version. I like that we're doing something different. Under support and downloads, there should be a utility here for us. And there might be even a QR code in the box that we can scan and use our phone to do this. I like to do this the old school way. So we have the F4-424. I guess this really doesn't matter. It's a 4 drive, 424. And then this will show us all the software for it. So there's our user manual right there. That's where your documentation is going to be versus in the box. They give you some very basic instructions in the box. Your more detailed user manual, you'll download as a PDF file. And then under desktop and system, the TNAS PC app, let's see, that is for Ubuntu. This one's for Mac. This one's for Windows. That's the one I want right there. I'm going to download it. It should be, that's just 126 megs. Let's grab that real quick and throw it on there. And we shouldn't need the installation package or the update package. The unit should do that on its own, but if for some reason the auto update feature isn't working, we have the ability to grab these manually and put them on there. So for future reference, we're going to want to have 5.1.123 when this is all said and done, and we'll double check it to make sure it's doing everything automatically as it should. But with this TNAS PC setup, this is where you really want to start if you're going to configure this on a PC, as I intend to. It's a small application. It's completely safe. And let's do the open file here. And of course, this file originated from an untrusted location. That's fine. It's TerraMaster's trusted. I don't know why that comes up, but certainly they're missing something for approvals. They might be just too cheap to pay for it. I don't know what the deal is, or somebody dropped a ball, but this is all legit. Everything we're doing is 100% legit, and there's no risk to your system. And this will just take a second for us to install. And then when it installs, it's going to find the NAS for us and walk us through. So we're going to launch TNAS PC, that's the name of this application, and allow network access through the firewall so it can find what it's looking for on the network. If you don't allow that, it won't find it. It should be obvious, right? So right now it's searching my network and it's trying to find any attached TerraMaster drive. So it's important we're on the same network. If I'm on the streaming PC on a whole different network, I'm not going to be able to find this until after I've configured it, and if I've configured it to allow outside access, which I don't usually do for security reasons. So I don't normally expect it to take this long. However, I also need to make sure that discovery services have been turned on, that I'm on a private network, and I may not be on a private network on this little box. So let me just check real quick. Properties, internet settings, Wi-Fi. This is public or private. It's already set to private, so we should be okay here. And you'll see we're on Wi-Fi 7. What I'm talking about. I don't expect it to take this long, though. I'm not quite sure why it's taking so long. Let's see if we can do a refresh. Sync task, I don't want. These are tips. Tap this up here and it starts the search again. What I was wondering is maybe because it was asking me for permission to allow it through the firewall, that it already hit the firewall, and after I gave it permission, it didn't try again. But normally this should come up pretty quickly. Just for grins and giggles, see, there's a refresh there. I'm going to close this down and reopen it. It is strange. I need to make sure my file sharing and discovery is turned on. Let me go back and check that one more. network, internet, Wi-Fi, properties, isn't it? Figure firewall security setting. Firewall is on. Private network is on. Firewall is on. Allow an app through the firewall. Huh. The only other thing I can think of is the NAS is not ready yet because the drives are brand new. It has to basically put a piece of software on these drives for us to be able to access it and configure it, and it may not be ready. I might be just being extremely impatient, and this is what happens if you don't read the documentation. Either that or I don't have my file and printer network discovery turned on. So let me just type in network discovery just to make sure this isn't on my side. Network discovery, networking, internet, networking, sharing, network, internet. Thought it was right in here. What happens if I search on my network? What if I just do it old school? Does the TerraMaster show up? Aha! Sharing is turned off. Turn it on. That might help. So I can see the HP mini PC and I can see the Galaxy Book laptop. I can see the television that I use to monitor these streams and the Hue bridge that I have. And I see the TV again here. It's pretty interesting that the TV has all these features that show up on the network. The TV is connected to the network wirelessly, and I always forget about that. So the TerraMaster is not showing up, which suggests to me that it's not ready yet. That's my best guess. Let me unplug the network, plug it back in, just to see if that's going to make any difference. Give that a minute to obtain an IP address. You know, there might be a light on the front of this unit that's indicating to me that it's working and not ready yet. But no, all the lights are green. So that implies to me that we should see it. And because I do this live and I don't set these up all the time, I haven't memorized the exact setup process because usually you only set these up once. I'm going to close this out one more time. Back up. Total of 0. See how fast it's searching and finding that? Okay, one last thing, of course, will be to restart the computer. And we'll try that real quick and see if that helps us at all. Very strange. I wasn't expecting that. And that is live video, right? This is what happens when we do everything live, is that we deal with the real confusion and setup of a new product that you're not familiar with, and that you can go through that confusion with me, that if you decide to buy one, you've already had this experience virtually through me, and you won't have to have the same experience I'm having or whatever misunderstanding I'm having right now. You're enjoying that right along with me. So it's almost as though you're getting this experience whether or not you would initially have the same misunderstanding is irrelevant. It's to ensure that you won't. And we're going to find out one way or another which piece of the puzzle I'm missing, because at this point, this is on Carey. This is not on anybody but me, in the sense that my lack of familiarity and rehearsal with this product, which is exactly what you're going to go through when you buy one. It's not like you're going to buy one to rehearse with it so you can buy one and make a video on it. So I try to keep these as real, as genuine, and as authentic as I can, so that if you decide to buy one, you can go through this experience with a virtual experience of having watched my video and sort of virtually gone through it with me, and won't make the same mistakes or misunderstandings that I'm making. So we're going to allow this to go ahead and search all over again. You'll see it's taking much more time now, which is a positive thing. When it comes back instantly, that's sort of cached its answer, and it says nothing's changed on the network, so I don't need to search all over again. Typically, that does come up much faster than this. So I'm just a little bit confused right now, but that's okay. This is what keeps my job from being boring, is I get thrown these little curveballs. And if you set up TerraMaster devices a lot, you won't go through what I'm going through, because you'll be more familiar with the product and the way it deploys. So I'm basing this just on a generic setup process of NASs in general, and I'm following the same concept and the same general process as I would for any NAS device. And normally, this is where the NAS device shows up and we can connect to it. So I'm not sure what's happening there, but we'll just go ahead and let this search it out, and we'll go from there. In the meantime, while we're waiting, let me look over in the chat room and see what's on your mind. Dwayne says, watching Carey try to find this NAS is like watching a good mystery movie. Dwayne, it shouldn't be this hard. I think I'm missing a step. Bikeman wants to know what's the best way when setting up a newer ISP modem router Wi-Fi to prevent network showing network name, and like number 3, newer gateway modem supposed to arrive. Well, that's off topic for today's video. However, I will invite anybody in the chat who'd like to address that question. We do other videos where we do questions and answers, or we reach the end of a topic and we're ready to bring on other topics. But while we're on the subject of NAS, if you have any NAS related questions, certainly would invite you to ask those. Now, we're still not getting anywhere. So what I'm going to do is a little harsh, but I'm going to pull the power off this NAS. Now, I don't recommend you ever do that. However, because we have no data on these drives are completely wiped clean and completely reset. It's not like we're going to corrupt anything. But I've pulled the power cable, and I'm going to plug the power cable back in, and I'm going to turn the unit back on. I'm going to see if I get a different result. It's pretty strange. I don't recall having this issue setting up a TerraMaster NAS before, but if I did, I probably would have forgotten it by now anyway. So it's quite possible I'm repeating the same mistake I've made before. This is only the 3rd time I've set up a TerraMaster NAS. So 3 times in 3 years, probably, or 2 years. It's not often enough to have me memorize a distinct process for this manufacturer, but it should be like the competitors. So sometimes just a reboot is all it takes. Now let me go back over to our mini PC. I have to go full screen over here. And let's just take a look at refreshing the network and see now how it comes back so quickly. But this is still booting. We should get a beep when this is ready. And anytime you turn on a NAS, let me go back to camera 1 to explain this. Quite often, when you turn on an ASUS or a Synology or a QNAP, you're going to get a beep about not 30 seconds, probably 90 seconds to 3 minutes after you turn it on. You're going to hear a loud beep, and that means it is now available on your network. The first beep that I heard on this TerraMaster is just indicating you've turned it on. I need to wait for a second beep And that's pretty universal of all NASs, that when it's ready, it's going to give you an audible tone. There it was. It beeped 3 times. Did you hear it? I don't know if the noise suppression cut it out. It went beep, beep, beep. Now I should see it on the network. Am I a liar? Let's find out. We're going to go back over to the HDMI input, which is the mini PC, and let's do another search. And this time it should find it. It's not finding it. So one more time, I'm going to close this out, and I want it to just do a fresh look. Look how fast that came up. It found it immediately. Immediately. Here's our NAS. That's what I was expecting it to do. Now, if we want to connect to it, let's see, do we double click it? What does it do if we double click it? Modify the, I don't want to modify the IP address. One of these buttons up here. Change the IP? No. Login. That's what I want right there. I don't know why double clicking wouldn't log me in. Why does it want us to change the IP? Let's see, the IP address is fine. The administrator's password, if no password is set, try the initial password admin, ADMIN. Oops, I mistyped that. One more time. ADMIN, enter. Okay, now it's going to open up a web like Microsoft Edge or whatever your browser is, and it should log us in here. Log in. Here we go. There we go. A little stumbling block there, but again, I hope you can learn from my misunderstanding and impatience. Usually a good 3 minutes is what it takes for a NAS to fire up, initialize, and be ready on your network. It's not immediately. So normally when you turn a NAS on, you just leave it on 24/7. And rebooting it shouldn't be something you're doing very often. Now, because these drives are completely blank, they're going to need to have a bootloader placed on them in order to boot to the OS. We don't have one. So it's telling us you need to download a bootloader. And normally this can happen automatically, but might just want us to download it ourselves. So if we search for our NAS here, we have a 4 drive, and we have an F4. By the way, none of the other reviewers really show you the setup process, which can be a little confusing if you've never set up a NAS before. Under desktop and options, we want the bootloader right here. And, you know, it's a pretty small file. It's 1/3 of a megabyte. So it shouldn't take much to grab that. We're going to keep it, even though it, say, oh, that looks dangerous. And then we're going to go back over here and load that. So we'll browse to our download directory. That's our bootloader. It's an image file. And apply it. Okay, now it says these drives, you know, they're completely blank. There's no partition, there's no information. Only one LAN port can be connected during our installation. We only have one used. Please keep your TNAS device connected to the internet. Otherwise, you can't install the TerraMaster operating system. Right, because it needs to download that from TerraMaster. That's what this little bootstrap bootloader does. Now, it says we're using an incomplete desktop hard drive or an unhealthy old drive and likely to cause a slow response. It may cause a system crash or RAID. And then there's a hard drive compatibility list. Now, we are going to be in this list. Synology and QNAP, especially Synology, has been getting really restrictive over their hard drive compatibility list. In all fairness, TerraMaster has been very welcoming of almost all drives. Their compatibility list is quite wide. It may be because these are recertified. However, these drives are 100% healthy, so I'm just going to ignore this generic warning. It says, how do you want to initialize this? Interestingly, custom is the only option here. Default doesn't seem to apply. Let's go custom. It says select the hard drive, select drives. It's checking these drives right now to make sure they're okay. And we need to wait for this check to complete before they'll be offered as options. The bigger the drive is, the longer this check is going to take, but it shouldn't take very long. It's a one-time setup process to verify the foundation we're building on is not flawed or damaged, because you don't want to build on top of a flawed or damaged foundation. And the bigger the drive is, the longer it takes to check it. There's more to check. This is a standard operating procedure, and many of the other NAS manufacturers do something similar. Just looks a little different. And as you see, as it checks the drives, even though it told us our drives might be bad, that's simply because the recertified version perhaps wasn't on the compatibility list because it's recertified, and they want to play it better safe than sorry. But all drives are good and healthy, and they're already selected. So we're going to hit next. Now it's going to tell us that these drives are going to be deleted, and anything you've got on them is going to be removed. But since they're already deleted, yeah. At this point, we can create an online TOS system or manually install it. I think online is what I want. Let it just go to TOS's, TerraMaster's website, download the operating system right now while we're live, and then install it so we don't have to do anything but wait. So this is going to take a couple minutes. It shouldn't take too long. Once the operating system is put onto these blank drives, then we can configure the drives to be what storage arrays we want. We can have one storage array, RAID 5, RAID 1, RAID 3, RAID 10, whatever we want. We're not there yet because we need the operating system first, and the operating system needs to sit on one of the drives. You can see the conundrum here. So it just takes up a little tiny space. It's insignificant. And then the rest of the drives are available. You don't even notice the space it's missing. It's hidden away. But it doesn't have any built-in storage to put the operating system on. It's going to use the drives you plug into it. But it's so small and insignificant, you're not really losing any space, and it's nothing to freak out about. And that's universal among all NAS manufacturers. So while we're waiting for that, let me go back over to camera one, and let's take another look here in the chat room and see if you have any NAS questions. Is this NAS wireless? That's what K-Cordius Technology wants to know. Well, many NASs like Synology have removed the ability to go wireless, but TerraMaster will allow you to add a USB wireless, but it has to be a specific chipset. And if you'd like your NAS to run at 1997 speeds, you can certainly add that if you want to. One of the greatest ways to ensure that your NAS will be unreliable and slow as a snail is to put it wirelessly. The idea behind moving 22 terabytes over a wireless network, and that's on one drive. Remember, we've got 4 22 terabyte drives. We're going to lose one as redundancy, so that gives us 66 terabytes. If you were to move that wirelessly on this TerraMaster and you had a good wireless signal, it would take you somewhere around 9 days of just doing nothing but moving data. So there's some debate as to whether or not that's a benefit. It's certainly understandable why Synology has disabled it, because they were tired of people complaining about how slow and unreliable their NAS was due to the unreliability of wireless in general and its decreased speed. And since the wireless dongle that TerraMaster will acknowledge with its built-in driver is several years old, you're basically on Wi-Fi 5. So if you really wanted to do that, you could. But I mean, I suppose you could also kick yourself in the crotch. I mean, I guess some people are into that. So just because you can doesn't mean you should. And, you know, don't take my word for it. You could buy a $20 compatible USB Wi-Fi dongle, plug it in, and then come back and tell me what a stupid waste of money that was. But it does work if you define work as barely. That's a far cry from using the 2.5 gig Ethernet adapter. That's going to be far more reliable, far more secure, handle more simultaneous transactions of data coming and going all at the same time. and not have signal strength problems depending on where the NAS is and where the computer is. So I would not use a wireless NAS, period, end of story. Defeats the whole point of having the NAS, in my opinion. All right, let's see what else. Fair question. Fair question. The idea of having it wireless makes it's appealing, but then actually doing it is very unappealing, very regretful. Should the NAS have a static IP address? Andy wants to know. Well, the NAS won't know what IP address your network is on, so it'll be set for something called DHCP, which says, when you plug me into the router, I'm going to ask the router to put me on your IP range that you designated on your network and give me the next available number. That's how it works. Then if you want to go in and static that, make it permanent, that's up to you. But that's the whole reason why the assistant is there. So you can change your IP address on your router to change the whole IP address on the network, and you don't have to manually find this by grabbing a laptop, manually setting its IP address away from your network and onto the same as this one, so you can change this one. That's a very strange and difficult way to get things done, and also very insecure, because if the IP address never changes, then hackers know exactly where to go every time. If it's always getting an IP address from the router when it boots, it may get different IP addresses, and that keeps it moving around the network, which makes it a harder target to hit for hackers that may be attempting to get into it. So DHCP is always recommended. It's easier, it's faster, it's more secure, and it's just one less thing to worry about. I'm going to grab a cold Gatorade, and we'll check on this download here. This download will take about 5 or 10 minutes. It's not a big deal. It only has to be done once when you set the unit up. And setup on these can be kind of fun if you're, if you're not looking at the end goal, but rather what you're looking at is the enjoyment of the setup and the process. It can be quite a rewarding and enjoyable thing. If what you're trying to do is you're trying to get from Phoenix to New York and you're going to drive, you're going to be 4 days or 5 days in the car. If you need to, if all you can think about is getting to New York, and you can't appreciate the scenery of driving across country in America, just jump on a plane and be done with it. So, set your expectations accordingly. Now, I still see a 0% here, so let me just see if we should be progressing with a download. Yeah, it says it's downloading it, and I do have a relatively slow internet connection here, and that's not on TerraMaster, that's on me. And it wouldn't be any faster if I downloaded it manually and then uploaded the file locally off the network to the NAS. I'd much rather do it this way, even if it means it's going to take a few minutes longer. It may not actually, it may end up taking the same amount of time. It's just that I don't have to babysit it and hold its hand. It'll just take care of itself, and I can just do other things. Now remember, this is just installing the operating system. We can't even begin to configure what RAID array we want, or what storage pools we want, or what shares, or how we want to configure it, or what apps. That's a part of the operating system. So that happens after this. So the bottom line is, when you set up a NAS, this is not a toaster. This isn't something you plug in the wall, stick toaster in it, stick bread in it, and start toasting. This is something that requires a setup. You have to put the drives in it. You've got to get the bootloader on it. You've got to get the operating system on it. And you always want the latest operating system, because of all the threats that exist. You want to be secure. Once your operating system is on it, then you configure the operating system to your potential, your preferences, your values, your needs, your wants, your desires that are unique to you, and nobody else on the planet has the same needs as you. That's why it's so customizable. That's why Baskin & Robbins has 31 flavors of ice cream. It's not like you get vanilla or chocolate. Well, those might be the most popular sellers. A lot of people like the other flavors, whether it's pecan, mint chip, or some goop that looks completely disgusting, but somebody loves it. And so for that variety and that expression of individuality, it allows people to not have to do what everybody else is doing. And that means you have to make a decision. That means that now there's 31 flavors you have to pick from. And some people see that as a burden. Like, can't somebody just pick a flavor for me? I don't know. I imagine that's how the royals live in England. Everything is decided for them. I don't know, but I just imagine that when you're super wealthy, you don't have to make decisions. I like making decisions. I like making choices. It makes me a human being that has value and equality to other human beings. The minute other people have to make decisions for me, it makes me feel like I'm a child and incapable of making my own decisions, and I find it quite insulting. So the fact that we go through this, to me, this is an advantage. If you want to just go buy something plug and play, I'm sure Apple can sell you something for 4 times the price that you can plug in, and they'll tell you what you can and can't do with it and how you're going to use it. And if you like that, don't let me get in your way. The benefit of these NASs, regardless if it's QNAP, Synology, Asus, Store, or TerraMaster, to just name a few, is that universally they're all customizable, and they almost all universally start out the same way. No operating system. You have to put the operating system on it. That's the way you want it, because you want to make sure you have the latest one, not the one that was in the box when it shipped 3 years ago and doesn't have any of the updates. PSC Computers Missouri with a $10 super chat. Thank you, PSC Computers Missouri. He says, Carey, what's up with Superman? 4-bay NAS units are storage game changers. Great for small to medium businesses. Great stream, sir. Enjoy your day. Well, thank you. And let's define small and medium-sized businesses. When a business reaches a certain size, they need a proper server in order to handle the amount of traffic. These NASs can handle more traffic than just sharing on a PC. A Windows-based PC can handle about 10 different requests simultaneously. Any more than that, and of course the PC has to be on, and it might affect the performance of the person using the PC if somebody's using the PC that's being shared. I've seen offices do that. When they hire employee 11, employee 12, you either need a server or you need a NAS. NAS is low maintenance. It's 10% of the cost of a server. And on top of that, these will easily handle somewhere around 50 people at the same time. I mean, it varies depending on the model and the kind of data you're transferring. Somewhere between 25 and 50, depending on the type of data, the amount of data, and the amount of simultaneous transactions that happen throughout the business day, then a proper, well-fitted, well-equipped, terabyte of RAM, exabyte of storage, that kind of thing is going to set you back tens of thousands of dollars. And that would be considered to me a large business. So small and medium, those would be defined in my mind as somewhere under 50 employees that would all be at the office at the same time. So if they have 50 employees, but 25 only work half the day and the other 25 work half the day, you're only running 25 employees regardless, you're fine. But if all 50 employees are there at the same time, all requiring data requests back and forth to the NAS, it might start to get a little bit slow. An alternative would be to get a second NAS and say, well, for those of you working on these projects, it's on drive Z. And for those of you working on these projects, they're on drive X. And we divide that network traffic up between the two NASs, which is still 80% less than the cost of a server. However, that may not be practical. It's one more thing to maintain. And it may be confusing to the employees which one was X and which one was Z. However, again, the beauty of it is that you can configure these things unique to the needs of the business, including the budget and expectations and the cooperation of the employees. Some employees are accustomed to domain logins, plus you might have FINRA and HIPAA certifications that these devices may not meet. So you might have to spend, $40, $50, $60,000 on a server. That's no big deal when you're a corporation and you're making $50,000, $60,000 every 3 seconds. So that's a nothing expense. Home users, small businesses, and businesses up to 50 employees would do well financially for value, for performance and reliability and security with a NAS. It would actually be beneficial over a server that would cost more and require more maintenance and be less reliable and more prone to security exploits because it's typically Microsoft. But if it's a Linux server, you still have to deal with updates and you need specialized training personnel to configure that for you. Whereas these, you can just simply follow out of the box. You don't have to have any networking experience. And you can follow videos like mine and get it done. And it'll cost you a fraction of the price and be more reliable and potentially even faster, take up less space. I think this whole thing is 7 watts, so it's very low power. So at least without the drives in it. Food for thought. Martin wants to know if they still make 2.5-inch hard disk drives. Sure, of course. Of course they do. Rip City Raiders become a supporter. Hey, thank you for that. Rip City Raiders renewed support. All right, let's see if we've made any progress here. Sometimes staring at it's like watching a pot of water boil. Yeah, we're still downloading this thing, which is bizarre. Kind of felt like we should have had it by now. And, you know, my impatience is world renowned. I like to get things done. One of the ways that I would deal with this in a real world off-camera scenario is I would set this and go do something else. I might have to run an errand. I might have to go to the store. I might have to work on another PC. And so I'm not just sitting here staring at this, waiting before I can continue, as I must do during a live video. Unfortunately, they're not really giving us any indication of progress here. And I don't understand why this stays at 0%. Now it's telling us the system will be ready in 10 minutes, but if the installation is stuck, your hard drives may be faulty, and please replace your hard drives and try again. That is a very basic and generic answer. And I feel like it's been 10 minutes, but maybe it's only been 60 seconds and I'm that impatient. Wouldn't be the first time I've heard that. So while we're doing that, let's come back over here. Just as a backup, let's go ahead and download the TOS install, which appears to be, it's a little chunky, 624 meg download. Now my download speed here at Studio B is pretty pathetic, but I still feel like that's moving decently. And we should have gotten there by now for the amount of time I've been stalling and talking. So that concerns me that we're still at 0. So I'm going to go back at the same time. And we'll snooze that. Do not show this ever again. And let's do one more try here. This is very unusual. And I would say probably more to do with maybe those recertified drives, although they are perfectly fine, or with my crappy internet connection here at Studio B. Not likely an experience you would replicate. See, it's saying it's failing to load the bootloader. We still have the bootloader right here. Very strange. How do you want to initialize your NAS? Let's do custom. And next. Warning. All right, it's going to erase the drives. Yeah, we've already been through this. Manually install or online install. I'm going to try it one more time. Install. Just curious if this is going to move, because we know that it's moving over here. We go under our download section. We can see that's not taking that long to finish. So this finishes before this even hits 1%. We're going to go back and do it one more time and load the TOS manually. Once again, this is not something you would likely experience if you have a decent internet connection, which I do not have. Cannot stress that enough. Got a little ways to go. But it's nothing to freak out about. It's nothing to panic over. It's just your initial setup. And the initial setup of anything, you buy a new car, you got to move your seat and your mirrors and your steering wheel height and telescoping to where you want it. And it's like you just keep fine tuning and adjusting it because you'll never set it right the first time. And then finally, after a little while, you'll get it dialed in and you'll never touch it again. So kind of the same thing here. Now, I will say with Synology and QNAP, this process was a bit smoother, but it is just a one-time thing. And once it's behind you, it's not as though you really had a big investment in it. Yeah, you see, we're still stuck at 0%. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back. And then we'll see if it gives us a bootloader concern. I am trying to wrap this up in the next half an hour because we have, once we get this installed, just doing the basic configuration is likely a half an hour. The beauty, again, is once you've set it up, you likely never have to go back into it ever again for years. So overall, putting a couple hours into it and getting a couple of years back seems like a pretty good deal to me. So we're going to load that bootloader one more time. And we're going to start. We're going to get the warning that drives. We're on the compatibility list. Custom drives are good. Hit next. Erase the drives. And then manually, you see how it's defaulting here? It wants me to manually download the TOS installation package. Well, we should have that by now. So let's go ahead and browse for that under downloads. Maybe I don't have it yet. Let's just look and see if Microsoft Edge is holding it. Yeah, they're holding it because I think it's dangerous. We're going to keep it. Now when we go over here and browse for it, it should be there. And double click it and hit next. I expect we're going to see that percentage sign move a lot faster than what we've been seeing. And I'm just wondering if it's the recertified drives that's throwing this off. It's also possible after the operating system update that it adds these drives to the compatibility list, right? And so all of these complaints about the drives not being on the compatibility list may be addressed through an update of the drive compatibility list that you wouldn't get until after you install the TOS. So, to save $100 a drive, I might be going through some extra steps because of that. But for $400, worth it. Absolutely worth it. Old Man 55 says, hey, go outside and do some grilling. Hey, you know what? You're not wrong. Throw some steaks on the grill and get my mind on my cooking, my eating, and when I come back, this thing will be waiting for me for probably an hour. You'll see this isn't a very long process, and my concern over how long it was taking was justifiable. That, the fact that it was sitting at 0% that long was quite unusual. So essentially what we're doing right now is we've downloaded the operating system from TerraMaster's website onto this mini PC that is wirelessly connected to our router. And then that same router has a cable coming out of it going to the NAS. And so the NAS going through the router is communicating with the mini PC through the wireless network. These 22 terabyte, 20 terabyte, 24 terabyte drives, they're quite chattery. If you like quiet drives, you don't want these big mechanicals. because you're going to hear them. They chatter like a pissed off squirrel, and it doesn't hurt anything. It's not like they're chattering so hard that the device is vibrating and moving around the desk, but it is certainly unsettling if you're accustomed to solid state drives that are completely silent. And you might be worried that something's wrong when in fact, that's just how these larger capacity drives operate. They operate a bit louder. I find a little satisfaction in hearing it, knowing it's working, but it's interesting because I can hear it halfway across the house. And it gives me solace knowing it's working. If I don't hear it, sort of like when your kids are being too quiet. Kids are usually making noise. If you notice the kids have been quiet for a little too long, that's when you start to get worried. They're doing something that you probably need to check on. Now we're at 93%, just about done. And then it should reboot into the TerraMaster operating system shortly. And I hear those drives just a chattering and a chattering. Now remember, we cannot configure the drive arrays or the shares until after the operating system is installed. And we're at 2:30 Phoenix time, Pacific time. I like to end these broadcasts after about 2 hours. And let's see what we can get done in the next 28 minutes. That'll be my goal. Now, when you at home buy one of these, you won't be under the clock like I am. And so I do hope that you take your time and enjoy the process because you're only going to do this once. So try to enjoy it rather than just rushing to the destination. Enjoy the journey getting there because once it's done, you won't need to take that journey again. Unless you're a tech and you set these up for a living, in which case you'll get familiar with the process and then it'll be boring and routine. So you can either be frustrated or bored. Take your pick. Now, as we shoot this in real time, live, unscripted, unedited, and with one take, this gives you a real world definitive timeline on what you can expect, how much time you need to set aside if you want to set one of these up. I don't want you thinking you're going to just unplug it, take it out of the box, and plug it in like a toaster. If you do that, you're going to be very upset. Now the unit is beeping. We've got 3 beeps. And what it's doing now it's beeped again. It's going through the process of expanding and installing the uploaded operating system that we've sent to it and essentially doing the install. All we were doing during that 100% was we were basically just uploading and expanding the file. Once the file's uploaded and expanded, then it has to be installed and configured, which is what it's doing now. And then it will reboot into the operating system, which will look very, very different from everything you've seen. And it's just a one-time thing, right? You just do this the one time and you're good to go. It does not come from the factory with this, and nor would you want it to, because you'd likely get an old, out-of-date, and insecure operating system. So it's critical you get the operating system of the day you're installing it for the sake of both features, security, and performance and reliability. All of that is enhanced with newer versions of the operating system. And so if you paid all this money and you're not getting the best performance, reliability, security, and features, you're just throwing money away. So anybody who sees this as a negative thing is completely missing the point. And hopefully here, we'll have this restart shortly. And while we wait, let me take another look in the chat. So any NAS related questions, if you have any, please ask them in the chat. While we wait, we'll try and find some answers for you. Keep in mind, whether you're buying Synology, ASUS Store, a QNAP, they're all kind of the same They're different enough so as they're not to sue each other or copying each other, but similar enough that it's all very familiar. Process and the order of the process is nearly 100% identical, but how it looks and how it executes is just different enough to not get sued. Steve Chappelle wants to know, when is it a good time to replace a NAS drive? Well, the NAS will tell you in a RAID 5 configuration, you can configure it to email you if there's a drive failure. It'll turn a red light on which drive has failed. And you can be, reactive and just simply replace the drives that fail when they fail. For my customers, we don't want to deal with drive failures, so we replace the drives every 5 years, even if they're working perfectly fine. I strongly advise my clients, let's buy new drives. They'll be faster and larger, and we'll be upgrading the NAS and starting over with new warranties on the drives. And the likelihood of suffering an outage or any downtime is significantly reduced when we put new drives in it. If the customer says, look, these 5-year-old drives are running fine, I don't want to get rid of them, that's fine. When you have a drive failure, I will charge you an emergency rate to come out and deal with it. And that might be cheaper than replacing all the drives, and especially if you don't need the expanded space and increased performance. However, it's not my preference. I'd like to replace all the drives after 5 years for a business. In a home, you can keep them for 10 years, 15 years, because you're not really going to miss much, especially if it's a RAID 5 and you don't dilly-dally. So as long as you don't wait too long to replace the failed drive, you'll be fine. You won't lose anything. But if you dilly-dally, you procrastinate, and you lose the second drive, because let's face it, the older they get, the more likely they're going to fail. And once the first one goes, the others will fall likely soon. So it's very urgent you respond to that quickly and get a replacement in there. If you have trouble finding a replacement because the drives are so old they don't make them anymore, you may have no choice but to replace all of them, in which case backing up the NAS to some sort of external storage, which could take a day or two just to move it all over, a day or two to move it all back, all because you didn't want to prevent it to begin with. That's your call and your choice. So at the end of the day, when should you replace your drives is entirely up to you, your budget, your tolerance, your expectations, your values, and how important it is to you, to keep the NAS up running. Well, replacing drives doesn't guarantee one of the new drives won't fail. It statistically puts the odds in your favor that you're not likely going to have a failure, at least for the next 5 years, barring a theft, power outage, improper shutdowns, data corruptions, employees causing damage on purpose, spilling things on them, falling off the shelf and breaking. That's all irrelevant and regardless of the state of the drives at the time, because there's nothing anybody can do about that when human beings cause the problem, and the solutions with the human being. Now, what's happened now is, as it's put the operating system on, it has likely been assigned a new IP address and can no longer find itself. This is normal, and the way around it is to simply close the browser and go back to the TNAS assistant here. Again, I may be impatient. There may be another beep I need to wait for here. Let me refresh this and see if it still pops up. It is. And don't want to modify the IP address. See, I always want to double click on this. I guess I want to right click and choose login. It says my connection isn't private. It's kind of weird. It's all right. Continue on. And we're in super user settings for some reason. It wants a username and a password. So we'll put the username of admin. And I will put a password of, let's see, this is my password. Of course, I won't keep this. This is just during the live show. This is my password. And all of the outside remote access is turned off by default. Now, you can set up a security email here. So we can send you an email should you lose your password. And We can set that up to the Gmail account, right? cholzman@gmail.com. We're in Arizona, which is GMT -7. And then validation code. So I'm interested that it took me into super user settings versus walking me through just the normal setup. So I might have done something a little advanced here that I didn't realize I've done, but that's okay. It's good to see options. If I look in my Gmail account, I should have a validation code, and I do. And it says my validation is right down here. We'll put 7XAPSZ, and that should confirm that I'm the authentic owner of this device. What did it say? Username it doesn't like? Username is what? Insecure. Okay, well, let's just change it to Carey. How's that? That ought to keep it happy. Because everybody uses admin, you know? And if you already know half of the login is admin, then the other half is just the password. So you got your end user license agreement, blah, blah, blah. Scroll to the bottom, have the checkbox hit, and confirm it. There we go. Really got to get that box dead on. I don't know why they have this ugly dog as their wallpaper, but you can change it. We have 2 storage pools for some reason. I don't know why. And I would delete these storage pools. Let's see. Of course, security advisor is going to give us a bunch of information that you may choose to ignore. I don't recommend you ignore it, but because we're live and we have about 15 minutes left, I want to try and get through this as quickly as possible. Now, we do have a control panel here, just like we do in Synology and QNAP and ASUS Store. And here's where you're going to look for primarily any updates to the unit. That's my first and foremost concern. All right, and then my second concern is going to be getting into the storage manager section here. But first and foremost, under system, we want to check if the system is the latest. I want to check this box. I always wanted to stay on top of this. I don't want it to wait for me to give it approval. This is how people got infected with that virus. Always let it update and download automatically. There is typically a way to just manually do a scan just to verify. I mean, it's saying our current system is the latest, but when did it check? And if we find that it's not the latest, this 51123 is the latest, if you remember, we can always download and apply it manually if we need to. You should never need to. Here's my check for updates right now, just to verify. That's the button I was looking for. Remember, they're all kind of the same, whether it's QNAP, Synology, ASUS Store. Just kind of phrase things a little differently. Let's go under the storage area here. This is all wrong. I don't know why we're at GMT +8 when we should be 7. And we'll hit apply there, so that'll take effect and should get us to, yes, that is the correct date and time now. And if we scroll down a little further, I don't like year, month, day. I'm American. I like month, day, year. And I prefer a 12-hour clock, although Mara prefers a 24-hour clock. These are all just preferences that each of us can decide on our own. Now, when it comes to the storage array, that would be my second biggest concern. And in the storage array, back in the control panel, under Storage Manager, under Storage Pool and Volume, I want to make sure that these drives are completely erased. So somewhere, there's going to be an option. I'm just going to search for it here. Could be a way to delete the storage pool, maybe the trash can. We should not have any storage pools on there. over to our volumes. See, it's showing data on here. Says there's 5 terabytes on there. I want to delete it. I think because I took it out of a different NAS, these drives obviously, oh, I got to put my password in just because we don't want anybody being able to do this as a joke. So whatever that 5 terabytes was during testing on a different, it was actually probably a different TerraMaster. And because I didn't delete these before I took them out, it's good to know if you were to upgrade one TerraMaster to another, you could take your drives out and not have to reconfigure them. So that's the benefit of that. Normally, when you set these up, you're going to be setting them up with brand new drives that are unformatted. And I thought I did these to these drives, but apparently did not. So back over to the storage pool. I'm still seeing 2 storage pools here, which is bugging me. And I want one large storage pool. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. And you can see how easy it is to delete terabytes of data in a heartbeat. I want volume 2 gone. I just want one large volume. You can see that the storage pool's already carried over the previous RAID array. So I have to undo all that, which you would not do if you were doing everything brand new. But if you're reusing drives you've used before, this gets a little bit tricky. It tells us our drives are healthy. You know, our smart status, our drive logs, and it says everything is good to go. So the question is in volumes. Now I only have a volume 2. Still like to get rid of volume 2. I don't want any volumes. I don't know how I can make that any clearer. Now it does have some used space, but that may be the operating system. When you delete the volume, the data it contains, only applications will be deleted. Fine. Put the password in. These are steps, again, you wouldn't take unless you were reusing drives out of another NAS, which is what I'm doing. So not likely the steps you're going to follow. But what it should end me up with is a bunch of blank drives that are like new. So I can set them up all fresh, creating my own single big, large RAID 5 or TRAID 5 storage pool. And again, these drives are sizable, and it will take a second for them to remove their configurations. And that's normal. Smaller drives are faster. Now I see no volumes. Now that's typically what you're going to see when you use brand new drives. So we're going to go to storage pool and create one. Now, why it's still showing me 2, I'm still confused. Hard drives, 4 drives. I don't understand why I'm seeing 2 storage pools. The question is, am I deleting the data on storage pool 2, or am I deleting storage pool 2? See, what I think I'm doing is I'm deleting storage pool 2, but what I'm getting the impression this software is doing is it's deleting the data, but keeping the storage pool. So I may need to go another level up I don't know. I mean, storage pool 2 just disappeared. Let's see if we can do the same with storage pool 1. Do you have to put the password in every time to do this? Most people would never go through this process. When you set up your NAS, you're typically going to set it up with new drives, and they will not have predefined storage pools. They're going to force you through a walkthrough to say, okay, we can't use these drives yet. You know, the TerraMaster OS or the QNAP OS or Synology's DSM, they're going to say, you know, the next step for you is to set up a storage pool. And you can set up as many as you want. Now, I feel like that's good. Let's create a storage pool now. And I want to utilize all 4 drives for one large storage pool. And the RAID mode is going to be TRAID. But as you can see, I have multiple, just a bunch of disks, and RAID 0 and RAID 5, RAID 6, and RAID 10. TRAID is going to be superior. And this tells us out of the 4 22 terabyte drives, the green is what's going to be available to us, and the blue is going to be our redundancy. Meaning if any single drive fails of the 4, we will lose 0 data. A red light will come on. It'll kick an email to our address to tell us we've got a failed drive. And then the clock is ticking to get that drive that's failed replaced. While the unit is on, you don't have to turn it off, with an identical drive, and it'll automatically, well, you may have to tell it to go ahead and start rebuilding, and it'll rebuild the drive with all the missing data, regardless of any of the 4 drives. So that is exactly what I want, and it does confirm that, you know, look, you're going to erase everything. I'm fine with it. And it's just going to take a minute to go through and create this new storage pool in that configuration for us. The reason we had 2 storage pools is I had 2 of these drives in a QNAP 2 drive NAS, and I had the other 2 drives in another QNAP 2 drive NAS. And because I didn't delete the storage pools before I pulled the drives out of those, when I put all 4 drives into this unit, it kept both separate 2 drive arrays, which is kind of cool if you're moving from a 2 drive TerraMaster to a 4 drive. Theoretically, you wouldn't lose anything. Now, this necessarily wouldn't hold true if you were moving from one brand to another of NAS. And so now it's going to synchronize this. Now, the synchronizing process, this can take 24 to 40 hours, but we don't have to wait for the synchronization process to continue. Because once we've established our storage pool, then we have to decide how we want to share it. We can share it in multiple folders, giving certain users access to certain folders. I like to just create one big public folder and let everybody on the network share it without a password, using a guest account. If you're in the house and have access to my network, that's the only way you're going to be on it. And if I don't want you to have access to it, I'll simply put you on my Wi-Fi guest network, and you will not have any access to my network or other computers. That's what a guest network is for. So for me, in a building that's locked and secured, I'm not worried about strangers coming in and plugging into my network, accessing my data. Furthermore, my data is mostly my YouTube videos. I don't think many people are really going to break down the door to get those. Now, when it comes to, you know, this verification process, the synchronization process, the bigger the drive is, the bigger the volume is, the longer this is going to take. And you're going to know it's working because the lights on the front are going to be flashing. You could literally unplug this right now, take it into another room and plug it into the wall and sit it on the floor, not plugged into the network, and just let it run for the next 20 to 40 hours and just poke your head into the room and see if the lights have all gone solid. When the lights have gone solid, you could shut it off and put it back on your network if it's in the way. That's often what I do, and it's only done once during the setup, and this will take a while. But we don't have to wait for it to finish. We can go ahead and start setting up our shares. And of course, if we wanted to add M.2 to create caches or expand our array, we can do that as well. However, if you wanted your M.2s to be a part of the array, you're going to start all over again, because you have to recreate the array by including those. You can't add them to the array later. So here's what I want to do right now is simply go to my control panel again. And I want to look for, see, how do I get there? Home. user group, shared folder. I need to create a shared folder. So to do that, I just want one big folder. And there should be a way. It's not what I want. There's a way to add a shared folder here. I don't want an ISO shared folder. I want to create a shared folder. Name, description, location, quota. That was up here. Refresh, search. Might be in the wrong area here. As far as user group, I like to turn guest network access on. And that can be a little tricky to find. I've certainly see here, guest network is an account that's disabled by default. We need to turn that on by editing that. And somewhere, I always have a hard time finding it. Disable this account. We're just going to uncheck that. I want the guest account enabled. Now, enabling the guest account still isn't enough because that doesn't mean the guest account can access all the shares. So each share, you have to individually enable the guest account if you want guests to be able to sign in without a username and password to see the data in the folder. And then Windows is going to use something called SMB. And if we go into networking, we need to make sure that under the networking section, let's see, is it under file service? SMB, we want to make sure guest network is turned on here. I always have a hard time finding it, and it's always right in front of my face. Enable, enable. So it's not going to be under any of these. Sometimes it's under SMB Advanced. The advanced section. It's not helping me any. I always struggle to find this, and it's always right in front of my face. And again, this is a one-time setup deal, but I still haven't created the share, which I'm still a little stuck on. So like the file service, oops, let's go back to the file service. I don't think that's what I need. Enable SMB, yes. Enable. So I think we're back in the same place here. Here to storage manager volume. It may be under the volume we have to create the share. So it should show us the volume that we've created that it's currently synchronizing, and it's going to be a little slow because it's synchronizing right now, and it's not going to respond as quickly because it's doing this synchronization in the background. And the synchronization is just basically making sure all the RAID drives are synchronized properly together. And then under storage pool, if we drop this down, is there an option for us to create a share here? Storage application, name, file system capacity, storage allocation, sorry. That seems fine. Settings, fast synchronization, that's fine. Faster RAID repair. Yeah, we can start. May not let us, yeah. I was going to say it may not let us turn that on until it's synchronized, but that's fine. Faster RAID repair means that the system may be less responsive when it's repairing. meaning anybody on the network might be complaining it's a little slow. But on the other hand, it'll get done quicker and be back up to normal faster, but that's a personal decision. Let's go back to volume. We should be able to create a volume. Where is our volume creation? Plus, create a volume. Create a volume on the existing storage pool. See, this stuff is always right in front of my face. It's just you got to look for the little icons here. With TerraMaster's operating system, they're just expecting you to know what these little symbols mean, and don't ignore them like I've been doing. So we're going to use our existing storage pool. Even though it's still synchronizing, we can go ahead and do that. So the name is volume 1, and the description we can leave blank. The storage pool will be storage pool 1. I mean, I prefer to name it something else, but I guess it's not going to let me. The free space is just under 62 gigs, which works out to about what I mentioned, 66. And we're going to use all of it, just the maximum amount, and hit next. Now we can enable the hyperlock to or protect. Basically, it's a way of creating a write once, read many scenario where you don't want users changing that data like a CD. I don't use that, so I'm going to just hit next. We have a choice of operating system, the B-tree file system or Butterfuss BTRFS, or the old out-of-date ext4. I much prefer the more robust, more reliable, less corruptible BTRFS, and hit next. And it says, okay, your name is going to be volume 1. There's no description. It's going to be located on storage pool 1 for the full capacity in the BTRFS file system. Sure, yes. And then it's going to make that. Now, what I've done is I've created a giant 66 terabyte storage device that sits on my network that everybody on my network can access, whether it's movies, music, Excel, spreadsheets, Word documents, Notepad, photographs. It even has AI built into the photo app on the TerraMaster OS apps that can automatically identify what's in the photos. You could say, show me photos of whales, and all of the pictures you've got uploaded to your NAS will the AI recognizes the ones that have whales in them. It's pretty darn cool. And again, not unique to TerraMaster. QNAP and Synology do something similar. And this is just the beginning of what AI is going to be able to do with to help us make our lives easier. And as you can see, we have not interrupted the synchronization. But when we go to the volume now, we should have the ability to edit who has access to this volume. And that's typically, see, there's our delete the volume. I know we've already deleted previous volumes. We need to allow access for guests to access this volume. That's our storage pool. Don't confuse your storage pool with your volume. Your volume is on your storage pool. Your volume can't be bigger than your storage pool, but you can have countless volumes that add up in capacity, like partitions, on your storage pool, which I've configured as like one big hard drive. I like one big partition. That's just me. If I want multiple partitions, I use something called folders. It's just a lot easier without voluntarily locking myself into running out of space on one of them and having to resize. It's a huge pain in the butt. If we don't like this wallpaper, we can change it. We can right click on the desktop and go to settings. And under desktop, we can change the wallpaper to something other than an ugly dog. Couldn't it have been a good looking dog? I'm just saying. German Shepherd. I might be biased. What's this one look like? We've got a few options here. How about just Earth? And of course, there is a login screen too. The login screen is going to go back to the pup. So I want to get rid of that. I want to get rid of that dog. I'd much rather see that. But that's just a personal preference. It has nothing to do with the operation of the unit. Now, when it comes to apps, we do have an app center here, just like your telephone, your smartphone, and you can go through the plethora of different applications to accomplish different tasks, whether it's a surveillance manager for your cameras to record video to, synchronization, a photo server, if you want to use it as a Plex server, a web server, a VPN server, a Docker manager for containers. And the list goes on and on and on. And it's not as feature rich as Synology or QNAP. And the money you pay extra for Synology and QNAP is really paying for the development of these apps. But a lot of the apps they have are pretty obscure that certain individuals need. The apps that TerraMaster is using are more universally wanted by the general public, less obscure. And of course, they continue to improve on that constantly. So if I want to be able to access this share, I'm just kind of curious now. Let me go back to my control panel and let me go back to my shared folder. And there's my shared folder, and I should be able to edit it. Let's see, edit. Don't need to do any of that. Permissions, scroll down. Guest access, read and write. That's what I want. That's fine. And as far as description is public, the name of it is public. That's what I wanted the name of it to be. Just want to double check I have. There is a recycle bin. If you use the recycle bin, you better remember to empty it, or you're going to run out of NAS space in a couple of years and wonder where it all went because you never took the trash out. Now you can hide this in network neighborhood if you don't want people to find it. I don't know why you'd want to do that on your own network, but you could. Or you could have multiple shares that only certain shares you want to be visible. Again, I'm just dealing with one. Now under SMB, is there a, there's a create permissions? Edit. Client. Oh, I thought somewhere in here there's one more guest permission on the SMB side of things. As I recall, sort of, that's not it. That, close that. Of course, you can set up remote folders if you want to do that to have outside access. Be very careful with that for obvious reasons. User group. So I feel like we've got the guest permissions turned on. Let's just see what happens if we try, because I feel like I'm still missing one. If I go to network now, I should see TNAS. If I double click it, I should see the public folder. And if I double click it, it should not ask me for a password. It didn't. So now I can access, basically I can right click here and maybe it's not up here. Let's go to view. Let's go to the three dots. None of that's working for me. Do it this way. Let's minimize this. Let's get rid of this. The final step would be to map a network drive to this so I don't have to find it every time. So I would say map a network drive right here. I would like to call it the Z drive so that any USB drives I plug in that become D, E, F, G aren't going to run into the same drive letter for a long time. Browse, find the TNAS, find the public folder, hit OK, and finish. Now, when I go to my computer icon, I have what appears to be an internal hard drive of a capacity that appears to be about 66 terabytes according to this number right here, 65 and change. We're at 65 terabytes of open space, and I would just copy files such as, say I wanted my user folder just as a backup. Oops, I'll go back to my computer. Go to my Z drive and paste it no differently than you were copying to a local internal drive, only it's going to transmit over my Wi-Fi network. And of course, we may have some file permission issues with some of these files I'm trying to copy, right? So that wasn't the best example I could give you, other than let's take a bunch of items from the desktop here, because we know those aren't system files that are being secured. We can take all of these shortcuts, for example, right click. If I can do it right. Good. Right click. Copy, right click, paste. And it just copied them, right? It didn't move them away. I didn't relocate them. I just put a duplicate copy on here. Now, anybody that wants to go on my network and access my NAS drive will all see that as though it were installed on their computer and be able to access it and even run it from the NAS. You don't even have to copy it over. You can run it just as though it were a drive installed in your computer. And this will work on your phone, and this will work on your laptop, and this will work on your tablet, and this will work on all of the computers in your building on your network. And on top of that, you can configure it to have outside access so that when you travel, you have your own cloud essentially without having to pay for it, or your own personal media Netflix that you travel around with your own library or your own music that you can play through your phone. Mitch will do that when he travels. And so this is just scratching the surface of what we can do with the NAS. In the meantime, it's still synchronizing, and it will synchronize for the next, 30, 40 hours. And since I don't want this on my desk for the next 30 or 40 hours, it's in the way, I will power it off. I'll move it somewhere where I can just plug it in without the network, and I'll turn it on, keep my bench free so I can do other things. And I'll just watch for the lights blinking. When all these lights right up here stop blinking, I know that the synchronization is done, and then I can just log in and make sure it passed, which I'm sure it's going to do because I've already used these drives before and they're in perfect condition. Do you have any questions that I can answer? We're about 15 minutes over the designated time I was aiming at, but I'm certainly happy that I can demonstrate this from beginning to end on a basic config. David Graham wants to know, would you restore from a backup or replace the drives one at a time? That's entirely up to you. If you only have one drive fail, it's easier to let the RAID just rebuild itself. If you've had more than one drive fail at the same time, you'll likely have to rebuild the array and restore from a backup. Old Man 55 wants to know if my customers have me install NAS for them. Of course, they would have no idea how to configure this. Nor would they have any idea what NAS to buy, what drives to put in it, how to configure it, where to place it, and how to configure all the computers to have access to it. So yes, my customers pay me to do all of that. I source it, provide it, deliver it, configure their computers, show them how to use it, and then if they have any problems, they call me. That's part of being a managed service provider, or MSP. NetFreak wants to know, is it advisable to use different DOM disks for a NAS? With different DOM, chances are they may not go dead on you at the same time. Once again, you're dealing with theoretical, and you're dealing with hypotheticals and theoreticals that have no industry standard basis upon which as a precedent for you to justify this imaginary solution as being better. I would say it's totally in your imagination. That the evidence in real world usage scenarios does not indicate that there's any evidence that provides any statistical proof that changing the drives out to different types of drives would be beneficial. In many cases, in my opinion, it would be worse because the different drives may have different qualities, and the different qualities on some may be better than others. I'd rather have one consistent quality across all four for the sure assurance of consistency. That's my theoretical. But my theoretical is also based on the support I do in real life for my customers, and that's never once bit me on the behind. Consistency will always be more important to me than gambling. But it could work for you. It could work to your advantage. I wouldn't assume it would. I would think it would work to your disadvantage. But the only way you're going to know is to try and to share your experience with us and let us know. And then when I do it my way, we'll see which one of us fails first. And just because it happens for you or it doesn't happen for me, doesn't mean that another two people performing the same test might get the opposite results. So life is filled with a lot of uncertainty and chaos. And as long as you have backups, none of this stuff even matters. It's a pointless thing to think about. You're trying to outthink the will of the universe, and you are just a human being, and you're a speck of nothing compared to the nature that runs the planet. You will not outsmart it. What you can do is you can always have backups and be ready. So no matter what happens, regardless of statistics, regardless of odds and gambling, that you always have a backup and can restore from it. That is your one universal, always works every time, get out of jail free card. And you can use your imagination and hope for luck on any other alternative, imaginary, theoretical process, which could or could not work for you. I don't gamble with my customers. I stick with what I know works, which is scientifically proven and repeatable consistently. And I will always take consistency over gambling. That's the attitude I take. But I'm also not a home user. My customers' NASs go down, their employees can't work, their customers can't be helped, and they're losing hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for every hour that system is down. Backups are critical. We need to get them back up and running ASAP. The cost of the drives and the cost of the NAS is nothing. Cost of my labor is nothing. Cost of what they're losing in paying employees to sit around and do nothing, and the cost of the customers that aren't being helped is 1,000 times more than what they're paying me or this equipment. Oldman55 says, can I now take this NAS and move it to a client's? If it matches the configuration the client wants, yes, this is ready to go. Quite often I do exactly this here rather than do it at the client's. Because the synchronization is going to take a good 40 hours, 30 hours, there's no reason for me to take it over there and then have to go back again. Although, assuming everything passes, I can just do the rest remotely. My preference would be, let's make sure this is all 100%. Then I'll let the customer know it's ready. When are you ready for me to deliver it? And at that point, I just need to plug it into their network and configure the mapped network drives to the client and show the users how to use it. And I'm in and out probably in an hour. Gary, can you show us how to add the M.2 drive and configure it? If we want to configure the M.2 drive, we have to start all over again. Because the M.2 drive is either going to be used as a caching drive, which wouldn't do me any good because my files are all massive. But my clients that use a lot of small documents and Excel spreadsheets would benefit from the perception of faster access, although their network speed is still the same. But if you wanted to get into that, there are two screws on the back of this unit. There's one screw right here, and it's on my left, your right, and this side that says TerraMaster. There's a screw right here on the top, and you'll notice I'm doing this with the power on, which you probably shouldn't do anytime you're going to open a unit up. Unless you're a professional technician, you should probably shut everything down and unplug it from the wall just to ensure that you don't hurt yourself or damage the unit. If you damage the unit, it will not be a warranty. That will come at your expense to replace it because you caused it. But once we take these two small screws out, one's just below the power cable, so it would even benefit you to get the power cable out of the way to ease the removal of the screw. This whole side of the unit is going to slide forward like so. I'm going to just kind of tip this on its side. While it's running, you want to be very gentle. These mechanical drives do not like to be moved while they're in motion. But if you're slow and gentle, it's okay. Another reason for you to turn this off. When we slide this forward, this comes off. And right here, once again, I really don't want to bump this around while it's running. But right here, you will see there's our RAM module, M.2 slot and M.2 slot. When we populate those, and you're going to do that with the power off, definitely not changing RAM or the M.2 drives with the power on. You can change the mechanical drives with the power on, but not this stuff here. You can add your own M.2 depending on if you want it as a cache drive. You probably don't need a very large drive, and you probably don't need it to be very fast. So just a basic budget Gen 3 drive is fine. On the other hand, if you feel like I've got 4 22 terabyte drives and I'd still like to get another 8 terabytes, you could slap another 2 4 terabyte drives or 2 8 terabyte drives and expand your array by that much, but you'll have to recreate the array again and start over again. But it's that easy to get to. And it doesn't seem to care which NVMe drives you use. Companies like Synology want you to only use certain ones, and specifically, they really want you to use their own brand. TerraMaster's not doing that. TerraMaster's very open-minded with the different types of storage that it finds acceptable, that the other manufacturers may say, no, that's too sketchy. We're not putting our reputation on you cheaping out with some unknown brand because you don't want to spend money to get certified quality drives. It's just an attitude of business versus enthusiast. But do know TerraMaster's more enthusiast-minded and Synology's more business-minded, and they're going to be less tolerant to anything non-certified. Certified things cost more. Businesses have more money. Businesses also lose more money if things don't work. So the tolerance level is much lower on the business side. Well, TerraMaster says this is for businesses. They're not invoking these very restrictive draconian rules that Synology is doing. But Synology is doing it for your own benefit because apparently they think you are too dumb to make a smart decision that's going to result in the loss of your data. And then because you're dumb, you're going to blame them for it. So they're not going to let you do it. They're just going to say, no, we're not going to accept that because we're not going to accept the failure that occurs because of your bad decision making to only turn around and blame us for it. And that does seem to be the attitude Synology has. And if you were Synology, you might feel the same way if you're getting undue blame because your customers are making bad decisions. TerraMaster, on the other hand, is saying, you do you, and if it happens, it happens. I mean, we're not going to take the blame, but it's not going to bother our reputation if that's what you do. Synology's like, it does bother our reputation because we have large businesses as clients. TerraMaster doesn't, not yet. And if that impacts their reputation to large businesses, they're going to lose a lot of money compared to just the home users. Home users, they don't make enough money off home users to really care one way or the other. And businesses, that's where the money is. That's where there's a lot of risk and a lot of liability. So Synology's in a different place when it comes to that, and they're going to be more strict. TerraMaster, they're not so serious about it. They're not playing in those leagues. So they're like, close enough. So you pick which one's right for you. Will there be an SSH connection through the Edge browser? Yeah, you can absolutely turn on an SSH connection here in the software if you want to. Because I'm logging in remotely, I don't need, because I'm logging in locally, I don't need that. That's stupid. But if I was logging in from outside, different story entirely. Completely. You could VPN it, you can SSH it. To SSH it in your own LAN that's a level of paranoia I can't wrap my head around. I'm sure it's possible, and I think it's a complete bizarre thing to want, but yes, you can do. And that's true across the board. ASUS, Taurus, Synology, QNAP, they all do that. Remember, you're still going to have the login name. You're still going to need the login password. And you can turn two-factor authentication on. I don't know what more HTTPS is going to do on a local area network, but I don't know, maybe you have a certain scenario or a doctor's office or something like that with HIPAA compliance that would require that. For a home user, I mean, it makes sense to me. Just because it doesn't make sense to me doesn't mean it doesn't make sense. It might just be something you want to do because it makes you feel good. And that's okay too. But to answer your question, so you can totally do. Universal across all manufacturers. That's basic stuff. And I do appreciate the question. Andy wants to know, how often do they update their operating systems? Really hard to say. Each manufacturer does it on their own timeline. QNAP's on their schedule, Synology's on their schedule, ASUS is on their, ASUS store is on their schedule. TerraMaster's working on version 6. When's it going to be out? I don't know. Hopefully they're always working on the next version or update. How often it comes out kind of depends on what the update's for. If it's adding a feature, if it's adding SMB multi-channel, if it's dealing with current modern threats that didn't exist 2 months ago, if it's, you know, dealing with updating new brands of drives and compatibility lists and how often those come out from the manufacturers. So it's really hard to say. Could be once a year. It could be 12 times a year. It could be 75 times a year. It could be once every 2 years. It really depends on how capable the unit is, how old the unit is, how much money the company wants to spend to support an old unit they're not making money from, but to pay the developers and the employees the cost of developing, testing, and deploying and updating the website, making it available to add more value to something they're not profiting from. So the older the unit gets, the less likely it's going to get updates as often. Same is true with routers and printers and everything else. Once the profit goes away, there's no money to justify paying the development costs unless you have a subscription fee you're paying that can help offset that. They'd rather you just buy a new unit at that point. Now, that being said, I've got customers that have units that are easily 8 to 10 years old and they're still fine today, even though they may not have gotten an update for a while. Usually, like with Synology, you're still going to get the latest DSM-7 if the unit is within 7 or 8 years old. There is a cutoff point for obvious reasons, including the resources it takes. It may be that putting that latest operating system on would take your NAS and make it useless because your NAS is so old that when you put that amount of burden on it, it just becomes useless and can't respond anymore. So they're not doing it to punish you necessarily. But if you want to keep up, you need to pay up. To a certain extent, you're going to get a few years of updates, I'd say upwards of 8 years. But you would expect those updates to become less frequent the older the unit gets and then stop entirely at a certain point because it won't be capable of the newer updates, resource requirements. So again, it's not a conspiracy. It's not there to hurt you. It's not there to force you to buy a new NAS. You don't have to update it. Just keep using it. If you want to do that, things still running, you're not having any security problems, you could use it for the next 40 years if you want to. The drives are working, the NAS is working. Updates will continue to work unless the networking SMB protocol changes and it's no longer compatible. What do I think of an SSD NAS? I like SSD NASs. They're smaller, they use less power, but they're also smaller capacity. So in order for me to get 60 some odd terabytes of SSD storage, and the biggest SSD I can buy is 8 terabytes, and those are $800 a piece, I would need 8 of those, and that would cost me somewhere around $6,400 plus the cost of a drive that could hold 8, which is another $800, so we're about $7,400. Or I can accomplish the same thing right here with mechanical drives for, let's see, 400, 800, 12, 16, $2,100. So it's 25% of the cost. And the networking speed is going to be bottlenecked regardless. So unless you're using a 10 gig network, which most people aren't, at 2.5 gigs, you're still pretty much running at the speed of mechanical drives anyway. And if multiple people are accessing it at the same time, you're dividing that bandwidth based on what your switch and your computer's network card can handle. And unless it's local storage in the computer, the benefit speed of SSDs is really not benefited here in the NAS, except to say that the NAS could be smaller. The ASUS Store Flash 12 will hold 12 SSDs, but they only run at 1x speed. So if you put Gen 4 or Gen 5 expensive drives in it, you're not going to go any faster. So you might as well just buy the cheapest drives you can that have the largest capacity, but you're still going to be 3 to 4 times the cost of just using mechanical drives. It will be the future as SSD capacities increase and the price continues to come down. But I like them for sure. I like them a lot. Just need more capacity, or I need that capacity to be more affordable. So thank you for the questions. I think that is going to be wrapping it up for today, as we've gone a full half hour over my intention. Maybe we'll bring this back and revisit it. But what I'd really like to do is put this into the hands of our friend Mitch Morrison, who knows nothing about just the basics about NASs. He's never even mapped a network drive, and he doesn't access it that way. He does it all through apps on his phone or apps on the computer. Everything is holding his hand through it. I've never seen anybody do it that way before. I'm way too technical of a person. So I'm fascinated by how the everyman would utilize this. And I'd like to see if his impression of this is positive or negative compared to the familiarity he has with the Synology. One thing he would like about it is he's got more storage in here. Not that he couldn't take the storage out and move it into the Synology, but that would be cheating. And that's not part of our deal. I want him to take this NAS, to copy everything off of his Synology over the network onto this, and to figure out how to load the apps he needs to do that, and to do it without asking me for any help. And then I want to know, was that a nightmare or was that fun? And the end result, do you notice any difference now that you've got them replaced? Does it seem faster, louder, easier to configure? Or does it seem worse because it's not what you're familiar with and you don't want to learn anything new? I think that's going to be the most honest review we can get, is to just hand it off to a non-technical person, because these are marketed that anybody can use them. You don't have to be a computer guru. And apart from the setup, which I've already done, the rest should be easy for Mitch to figure out, even when Mitch is not a technical person. That's what they claim, but is that what's going to happen? And if Mitch likes it, it's great. Then he can continue to evaluate it for us over time. If Mitch doesn't like it and prefers his old Synology, he can give it back, and he can go back to his Synology, and he can upgrade the drives on his Synology when he wants to. But these drives are staying in this NAS. That's what I'm getting at. I don't need a review of the drives. I know how drives work. All right, I think that's going to wrap it up. Thank you, Mara, for the video thumbnail and our video notes today and monitoring the chat room for us. And thank you for all of yours.
You're welcome.
And thank you for all of your super chat contributions, all my members and friends in blue. And those of you who are just joining us, I hope you'll consider coming around. Watching our unique content as we film everything live and unscripted for real. So you're not getting a false sense of how long these things take and buy something with the expectation you're going to set it up in 5 minutes as the polished video they shot for 3 weeks and edited it down and polished and uploaded, took out every honest thing of the process and only left you with a commercial. I'm not interested in making commercials. I think there's no shortage of them on YouTube. I'm here to show you reality. Reality takes longer. If this is taking too long, don't buy one. You're not the right person for this. If you do want to buy one, you know exactly, based on this video, how long you need to set aside your day for when you're ready to set it up. And you should be successful, as I've walked you through everything you need to know. And of course, if there's anything I missed, please leave your question in the comments below, and I'll do my best to provide you an answer or a link to your answer. Andy Kane just renewed membership now for 7 months. He says, thanks for the stream and sharing your knowledge with us. A big thank you. Well, thank you, Andy. And of course, to all the super chats from Frankie B and Craig Casabona, as well as Planet Cryos, PSC Computers Missouri, the new members or membership renewals, Andy Kane and Rip City Raider and Dwayne Blackwelder and Craig Casabona. Thank you guys for renewing your memberships and supporting our independence here, so we don't have to be a corporate spokesperson or a corporate puppet be told what to say. my thanks to the folks at TerraMaster, despite the fact they sent us one of these and we never got it, they went ahead and sent us another one. And we can't thank them enough for it. I think it's a great value. I think you're going to get much more value, bottom line, from TerraMaster than you're going to get from Synology or QNAP, unless the apps they're offering you prefer over TerraMaster's version, or that TerraMaster doesn't have it. But all the common apps TerraMaster has, the most common things people want to run apps on their NAS, TerraMaster's got it covered. And where Synology and QNAP may have a separate app for their Plex and a separate app for their music, TerraMaster just puts it all in one app. You just put one app on your phone and then you have access to everything. Some people may like that more conveniently. Other people may despise it. I love that TerraMaster is giving us options and allowing us to choose what we value individually instead of dictating to us, this is the one way you're going to do it. And do know that there's a price differential. When you want that more specialized stuff, you're going to pay a little bit more for it. And if you want something that's a great value, I don't think anybody can touch TerraMaster on price for value. So no right, no wrong here. Just have proper expectations. If you buy from Amazon, you have 30 days to return for any reason whatsoever. And at the end of the day, it may just be you won't know if you like it until you try it. But I hope I've given you some idea of what to expect, so that the idea is if you do consider buying it, there won't be any surprises for you to want to return it. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Again, thank you to TerraMaster. I will see you all again on Friday. We've got another build coming up. I can't wait to share with you. I'll set this in the other room and let it run for the next 30 hours to synchronize, so I can clear the bench for other projects between now and then. And again, if there's questions I haven't addressed, right there in the comments below, go ahead and leave them. I'll do my best to provide an answer. That'll wrap it up for me for today. I'll see you all very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.